The Greenbrier Ghost, a tale of justice from beyond the grave. In the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, where the dense, whispering forests of West Virginia cloak ancient secrets beneath their canopies, lies a tale so unnerving, so steeped in both tragedy and the supernatural, that it has become an indelible part of American folklore. This is the story of Zona Heaster Shue, remembered not just as a woman but as the Greenbrier Ghost, whose spectral presence sought justice from beyond the grave. A story of chilling persistence. Our narrative begins in the late 19th century, in the peaceful village of Lewisburg within Greenbrier County, Virginia. Here, life moved at the pace of the seasons, with the townsfolk living off the land, their lives interwoven with the rhythms of nature. Among these simple, hard-working people was Zona Heaster, a woman of striking beauty, with raven black hair that cascaded like midnight shadows and blue eyes that seemed to hold the depth and mystery of the nearby rivers. She was the daughter of Jacob Heaster, a respected farmer, and her life was one of expectation, marriage, family, the quiet joys of rural living, her days filled with the scent of earth and the songs of the birds. Zona's path crossed with Edward Trout Shue in late 1896. Trout was a drifter, a man with a past as fleeting as the wind through the mountains, his charm as intoxicating as the strongest moonshine. Despite her misgivings, love prevailed, and Zona and Trout were married in a ceremony that echoed more of hope than of caution. Their marriage, however, was to be short-lived. On a frigid January evening in 1897, Zona was found dead at the bottom of her staircase in their humble home. Trout, who claimed to have found her upon returning from an errand, was inconsolable, his cries piercing the cold air, drawing neighbors to the scene. The local physician, Dr. Knapp, was called to the house, but his examination was cursory. He noted little out of the ordinary, attributing her death to an everlasting faint, a term so broad it did little more than mask the mystery. The funeral was an affair of sorrow and spectacle. Trout insisted on dressing Zona himself, choosing attire that was unusually formal for their station, a high-necked dress with a stiff collar, a veil over her face, and a scarf supporting her head. He placed a pillow under her head, and her body was displayed in such a way that only he could approach closely. This peculiar arrangement would later take on a sinister significance, especially as he seemed to hover over her, blocking others from getting too close. Days turned into weeks, and life in Greenbrier continued, but for Mary Jane, the grief was compounded by an unsettling intuition. Then came the night that would change everything. Lying in her bed, the air around her felt as if it had dropped 10 degrees, the silence broken by the soft sound of footsteps. Mary Jane felt a chill that was not of this world, and there, before her, stood Zona. But this was not the Zona she knew. Her neck was twisted grotesquely, her eyes filled with pain and an urgent message. "Mother," the ghost whispered, her voice a cold breeze through the room, "I was murdered by my husband." Shocked but driven by maternal love and a desperate need for truth, Mary Jane listened as Zona's spectral form recounted the horrific details, how Trout, in a jealous rage fueled by accusations of infidelity, had strangled her until her neck snapped. This visitation was not a one-time event. Zona appeared several times over the following weeks, each visit more compelling, her figure growing fainter but her message unwavering, urging her mother to seek justice. Armed with this ghostly testimony, Mary Jane approached the authorities. Initially met with skepticism, her persistence and the oddities surrounding the funeral began to chip away at the official narrative. The local prosecutor, perhaps swayed by the sheer conviction of Mary Jane or the odd circumstances, decided to revisit the case. Under the cold, unforgiving light of a winter's day, the truth was laid bare. The signs of strangulation were clear. Her neck had indeed been broken, not by a fall but by violent compression. Trout Shue was arrested, and the trial that followed was unlike any Greenbrier County had seen. The courtroom was a cauldron of whispers, the story of the Greenbrier Ghost adding a layer of mystique to the proceedings. The air was thick with tension, the shadows in the room seemed to move with the telling of the tale, and many felt the chill of the unseen. Yet, it was the concrete evidence of the autopsy that convicted Trout. He was sentenced to life in prison, but fate had other plans. He died in prison a few years later, his death leaving many questions unanswered but closing a chapter on one of the strangest murder cases in American history. Zona's story, however, did not end with Trout's incarceration or death. Her tale became legend, woven into the fabric of Greenbrier folklore. Even today, some claim that on moonless nights, if one stands near the old Heaster farm, you might hear a whisper or see a shadow that isn't cast by anything in this world. It's said that Zona's spirit still walks, her presence a reminder of her tragic fate and her unyielding quest for justice. Her ghost is reportedly seen in the places she loved, her voice carried by the wind, her footsteps light on the ground where she once walked. This haunting narrative has transcended time, becoming not just a ghost story but a testament to the love of a mother, the cry of a wronged soul, and the thin veil between the seen and the unseen. The Greenbrier Ghost has inspired books, plays, and even a film, drawing those intrigued by the macabre or the mystical to the quiet corners of West Virginia where the story began. Her story, both spooky and entertaining, is a narrative of love, betrayal, and the spectral hand that can still touch the affairs of the living, ensuring that even in death, one can seek the light of truth in the darkest of shadows.